Join me in the kitchen today as I prepare some delicious holiday meals. I'm going to be sharing some of my favorite potluck side dishes, a breakfast to feed a crowd, and one of the best fall salads to serve at any get-together. All these recipes are perfect if you plan on hosting the holidays this season or if you have functions to go to. You won't be left without new inspiring ideas. So I'll have these recipes linked down below in the description, or you can find them on my website, healthyelizabeth.com. First, I'm starting on the make ahead breakfast bake. So I have 10 ounces of frozen cut spinach and I've thawed it out. Now I'm gonna put it through a sieve. You just want one that's kind of finely meshed. That way the spinach doesn't seep through the colander and you retain all the spinach, but you get out as much moisture from the spinach as possible. I'm gonna grab a wooden spoon and I'll just press that and get all of that water out. I have one large yellow onion. And I'm gonna finely dice this, and I think I'm gonna use half of this onion because it's kind of a big one and we don't want that much onion, so I'm gonna go ahead and just use half of it. So run my knife through one way, and that's just fine like that. It'll make it nice and diced. But then I like to take my knife and I'll run it through those slices I just made 2 times, kind of spreading them out, and that just helps to get a nice fine dice. So it'll be a little bit smaller than your typical dice by adding in those extra lines. That way we don't have big chunks in the breakfast bake. So let's dice this up, and then we're gonna get this going in a nice hot skillet. Now I'm gonna grab about 3 garlic cloves, and these are really tiny ones, so I'm probably gonna use about 5 of them, and I'm just gonna give them a nice crush. I want to make sure they're nice and small. And the more you crush them, the more you don't have to dice them. It's easier to mince. So just give those a nice crush and we'll get these peeled. I'm gonna add about a tablespoon or 2 of butter, and then I'm gonna put all of our onions and garlic straight in there. Give that all a stir. We just want these nice and soft. We don't want to brown them too much. You just want them to be soft before you put them all into that bake, so that way they cook down really nicely in the oven. All right, we want to stir in that spinach and artichoke just until they kind of release all their moisture and let that cook off a little bit. And now I'm going to scoop this out and put it back into that same glass bowl, and I'll set it aside for a few minutes to cool before we move forward. I just have some whole sweet potatoes here, and all I'm gonna do to prep these for the oven is just take a fork and make a few little pricks in them, poke them a little bit all over, that way they don't try to burst in the oven. It kind of lets some of that steam escape. And then I'm gonna get this on a parchment lined baking sheet, and I like to bake mine off at 400 degrees in the oven for about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how big they are. Sometimes they need a little bit longer, but that should be perfect for this size of sweet potato. So in these go. Now my spinach and artichoke mixture is here cooling. I'm gonna let that keep cooling, and we're gonna prepare the rest of the filling that's gonna go in this. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of a bigger bowl, kind of like a medium-sized bowl, and I have a little bit of soft spreadable cream cheese. So this is Nancy's, this is a good one. Good Culture has a good one. There's a few really good spreadable cream cheeses out there, but just grab what you can find. I'm gonna grab a wooden spoon or this little gadget, which is my new favorite thing. I use it for sourdough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by taking an 8-ounce container of this soft room temperature cream cheese. Really, any kind of cream cheese here is gonna work. Just make sure it's nice and soft. That way we can mix everything together nicely. So I'm gonna scrape this all out. You could also use a little bit of mascarpone if that's what you have, or if that's what you want to try to use. That'll be delicious in it too. So I'm going to put that in this bowl. Then I'm gonna add in half a cup of finely grated Parmesan cheese. You can do this in a food processor or just by hand on a box grater, but the finer you can get it, the better. So we're gonna add in half a cup of that. To this mixture, I'm gonna add in a couple pinches of black pepper. That's really the only pepper we're gonna put in here. I don't want it to be spicy. I just want it to be nice and creamy. That way everybody could eat it. And then we'll add about half a teaspoon or so of salt. We don't want to make it too salty because we already have the Parmesan, which is pretty salty, but we definitely need to season the spinach and the artichokes. Now we'll mix that together. Mine wasn't quite room temperature, so it might take me just a second longer, but that's fine. All right, so this cheese mixture is nice and combined, really, really smooth. Now I'm gonna take the spinach and artichoke mixture here, and I'm gonna add most of it into the cheesy Parmesan mixture, but reserve about a quarter cup, maybe a half a cup of the mixture in here for later. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in here. Just leave a little bit left over in this bowl. And now we'll stir that together too. Oh, you can smell the artichokes and that Parmesan. This is such a delicious breakfast and the perfect brunch item. All right, that is exactly what we're looking for. Nice and creamy. Okay, I'm gonna move that aside for just a second. Now I'm grabbing a big 4-cup measuring cup. We're gonna do about 1.5 cups of half and half. Now in the same measuring cup, I'm gonna crack in 10 eggs and we're gonna whisk that all together. And this mixture is gonna be kind of like our eggy custard base that's gonna coat those English muffins and kind of make the whole thing bake together and just be delicious. And there's so much protein in this, so it's really good to feed a crowd. It's great for breakfast. It's gonna keep you full for hours and hold you over until that big dinner. So 10 eggs are gonna go in the half now. Okay, it's all going in the same dish. So I'm gonna take that same wooden spoon and just give those eggs a beat and mix it all together. Just until it's a nice eggy custard base. You want it to be nice and bright and yellow. That's how you know all those egg yolks have mixed together and really infuse that half and half. All right, beautiful. Set that aside. Now in this eggy mixture, I'm gonna take the rest of that spinach and artichoke mixture we set aside earlier, and I'm gonna add that straight into that egg mix. Use this to scrape it out. So all of that gets put in there with the egg mixture. So every layer here is really flavorful. I'm gonna sprinkle in a little more salt, flavor all those eggs, and a little more pepper. Then I'm also adding another 1/4 cup of my finely grated Parmesan cheese, and we'll mix that together. And then we'll be ready to assemble this really hearty and flavorful breakfast bake. Super simple and full of lots of good stuff. Okay, now I have a nice big 9x13 cast iron dish. And I think it's really fun anytime you're talking about the holidays to pick out all your favorite dishes and bring them out because they look beautiful not only on a buffet or at a potluck, but it makes it feel extra special when you have those nice dishes. So this is a nice fun one. It's great quality because it's cast iron, but it's also really a statement piece and it's very affordable too, which I love. So I'm gonna take a little bit of avocado oil. We're just gonna lightly grease it. So I'm gonna spray the bottom and wipe it with a little bit of a paper towel. You could also do the same thing just with a little bit of butter or the wrapper of a butter. So you can rub that all around just so that nothing sticks on the bottom. Because it's cast iron, I want to go all the way up the edges, even on the outside. It helps it stay nice and greased, but it also helps it conduct heat. So just rub that all around and we're ready to go. Now I'm going to move this over and I'm going to grab the English muffins. Grab my bread knife. Okay, so I have my bread knife and I have some English muffins. I'm using some sourdough English muffins that I made last week, and then I just popped them in the freezer bag and put them in the freezer so I can pull them out anytime. So these are just nice homemade ones, but you can definitely use store-bought. Any kind of English muffin, even a bagel or something like a really thick sourdough bread, something hearty that holds up in an egg bake. So I'm going to take my English muffin and I'm just going to slice it open. We're going to split all of these. I'm going to take the bottom here and put that in the bottom of my cast iron. Look at those beautiful sourdough English muffins. They have nice holes in them. So I will leave this recipe for you if you want to make sourdough English muffins too, if you keep a starter. And depending on the size of your English muffins, you might be able to fit more or less. But I should be able to fit about 8 English muffins, maybe a few more because some of mine came out a little bit small. That's okay, they're perfect to bake up like this. Okay, now I'm just gonna grab another little wooden spoon and I'm gonna put all of this cream cheese, spinach, artichoke mixture right over the top, or right over the bottoms of these English muffins. So just try to distribute this pretty evenly, but it doesn't have to be perfect because it's all gonna get runny and kind of ooze together as it bakes. So just do your best to evenly distribute that over the muffins. Spread that out nice and evenly. Totally okay if it runs over the edges. We kind of want that because then those edges are going to be nice and delicious once they get all bubbly and brown. Now I'm going to pop the lids on all of those English muffins. Try to get them roughly the same size if you didn't keep track. Here we go. Okay, sandwich them all up. All right, so now we have all of those English muffins kind of sandwiched up in there. And I'm gonna take the rest of our egg mixture here that's been set aside, and we're gonna pour this right over the tops. And to finish it off, I'll just top it with another little sprinkle of Parmesan cheese, and that's gonna get nice and crusty and make the top of this just look so yummy. This cranberry orange relish is something that we could eat the entire fall because it's that good. It's full of just wholesome ingredients and it goes with anything. It is so delicious. So what I have here is about 16 ounces of frozen thawed out cranberries. You can definitely use fresh ones, but they're hard to get your hands on. So anytime that I have frozen cranberries available or I have fresh ones, I grab a whole bunch of them and I'll just store them in the freezer because they do freeze really well. So what I'm gonna do first is start by adding in all 16 ounces of these thawed out cranberries into the food processor. And I like to start by adding these in first. That way they get nice and chopped up before we start adding in the orange peels because that's a little bit tricky to try to get it incorporated. All right, we'll set that aside before I get all stained and give my hands a little bit of a rinse. You want to make sure that you wipe up any spills right as it happens. That way you don't stain anything in your kitchen or your clothes. So I'm just going to wipe that up. I'm going to go ahead and pulse this again. Beautiful. Now to add my own spin to this, I'm gonna add a few fresh raspberries. I'm using about half a pint, and I love that it adds a little bit of natural sweetness, but it also adds just a beautiful color into the cranberries, which cranberries are very brightly colored anyway, but I think if you use frozen ones especially, they tend to look even brighter with a little bit of red raspberry in there. So I'm gonna add in half a pint of those. And of course, to add in that really beautiful orange flavor, I love using the little clementines or the cuties. These are so sweet, and you just want to make sure you get organic if you can, or soak them, because we're going to use the entire orange, not just the zest. We're using the entire peel, so you want to make sure that's really squeaky clean. And all I'm going to do is just cut this into a few different slices, just help out the food processor a little bit. So just cut those up, nice and juicy and sweet. Oh, it smells so good. I love how packed this is with vitamin C, so many antioxidants. This is actually a really healthy side dish and perfect for the potlucks and really any holiday. It's delicious. And I love that you can make it ahead of time. It gets better and better as it sits in the fridge. So 2 full clementines are going straight in here with the raspberries and the cranberries. And then of course we have to sweeten it up. So my chosen sweetener is coconut sugar. It's unrefined and it just adds a really nice natural sweetness. It's not overly sweet. So let me grab my measuring cup. There we go. Break that up a little bit. And I'm gonna add in 1 cup of coconut sugar. If you don't have coconut sugar on hand, you can definitely substitute this for regular sugar. So it's super versatile and flexible. You don't have to make it too sweet, or you can make it nice and sweet, almost like a jelly. So 1 cup of coconut sugar is going in. And the juice from that orange is gonna help everything mix together. Put my lid on and pulse it until it comes together. All right, this looks beautiful already and smells delicious. So I'm just gonna scrape down the sides, make sure there's no little bits of cranberries that are left in there that need to be chopped up. This is the most beautiful texture. Okay, put that lid back on, pulse it a couple more times. This just has the most beautiful red color to it, and it's gonna get better and darker as it sits in the fridge. Let me check it one time just for sweetness, because we can always stir in more coconut sugar if we need it. Amazing. That is delicious, and I'm gonna go ahead and put this straight into a serving dish. There we go. So easy and so quick and delicious. My sweet potatoes are still baking, but I'm gonna get started on the kind of custard mix and the topping for the sweet potato bake. So I have a couple eggs that I beat up, and then I'm gonna take a little bit of heavy cream. You could use half and half or even whole milk if you wanna make it a little lighter, but I'm gonna do just about 1/4 cup of heavy cream, maybe a little bit more. Make it nice and rich, and we're gonna add that into the eggs, and I'm just gonna whisk those together. Beautiful. And then to that eggy mixture, I'm gonna add in about 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. You can do a little bit more. Whenever I'm using vanilla, I tend to go a little bit overboard with the vanilla because it just adds such great flavor. So maybe 1½ teaspoons of vanilla extract. Whisk that all together. Set that aside for just a second. And I also have some butter that's been melted here. This is salted butter. I always use salted. Makes everything taste so good. So now I'm gonna start on the topping for this, and you can use walnuts, you can use pecans, and I love pecans because I love it to be really Southern style, and I just love kind of the sweetness and butteriness that pecans have versus walnuts have a more bitter taste. So I love using pecans because I feel like you don't have to sweeten them quite as much. So that's what I'm gonna use today. I'm gonna grab my pecans, and then I'm also gonna grab some fresh nutmeg. Okay, so in this bowl, I'm gonna make my topping. So I'm starting with 1 cup of chopped pecans. So you can buy them in like the pieces and the halves, or you can chop them finer if that's what you like, but I like having a little bit of a bigger crunch. So we're gonna use 1 cup of chopped pecans. And to the pecans, I'm gonna add in 1/3 cup of flour. That's gonna help make this kind of crumble topping here. I'm gonna grab 1/2 cup of brown sugar, real good dark brown sugar, and just pat that down a little bit. You can also substitute that for coconut sugar, but on the top of the sweet potato bake, I love just the brown sugar. And then inside, instead of putting brown sugar in the sweet potatoes itself, we'll put coconut sugar to lighten things up a little bit. So that'll be 1/2 cup of brown sugar just for the streusel topping or the crumble topping, whatever you wanna call it. And then to moisten this and bring it all together, I'm gonna add in 3 tablespoons of melted salted butter. And then we're gonna mix this all together, and it's gonna make this beautiful topping to go on top of the sweet potatoes. Crunchy and sweet. Those pecans kind of get caramelized. So yummy. And just screams the holidays. So I love doing little nut toppings like this. It makes it really filling and just special cooking with all the nuts. Time to pull these sweet potatoes out of the oven. Let those cool for just a second, and then we'll cream them together and get this baking in the casserole dish. I'm gonna do this in a bowl with a hand mixer, but if you're making a double or a triple batch, you can definitely do this in a stand mixer. I like to kind of squish the edges of the sweet potatoes a little bit to kind of open them up It makes it really easy to scoop out the inside. Or if you're doing this and you've already let the sweet potatoes cool all the way, then you can just squeeze them out with your hands. So I'm just gonna grab a spoon here, measure this out, but really you can eyeball this and just sweeten it to taste. Totally up to you and how you like cooking. So I'm gonna measure this out just to make sure I have the right amounts. You want nice, soft, and tender sweet potatoes. Add that into my mixing bowl. Now in this bowl, before I add any of the other ingredients, I'm gonna go ahead and use my hand mixer and just go ahead and whip those potatoes up and get them nice and fluffy. That way everything else combines really easily. Okay, good. That is nice and fluffy. Now I'm gonna go ahead and add our sweetener to taste. A cup of coconut sugar. You can use raw cane sugar, you can use brown sugar, but I love using the coconut sugar. It's just a little bit healthier, so I like using it and I have it on hand, so that's perfect. We're gonna add in 1 cup of sugar, and then I'm gonna add in all of that melted butter that I had from earlier. This is gonna make sure all those sweet potatoes are moist and buttery and just scrumptious. So add in plenty of good salted butter. Give that a little scrape. You want every last drop of that butter because it's gonna keep it nice and moist, along with the eggs and the heavy cream. Now at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and add the spices for this, and I like to keep it really simple, and I'm gonna do 1 teaspoon or so of cinnamon. You could do more to taste, but I like 1 good heaping teaspoon of cinnamon. I think that's the perfect amount. And then I'm also gonna do about 1/4 teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg. And I think if you can find fresh, definitely use it, but you can always use what comes in a jar. It'll be just as good. Oh, I love that you can smell that fresh nutmeg. It's so strong. So I just like to do a little bit of it, not nearly as much as the cinnamon, because we definitely don't want to taste it that much. We just want it to kind of be there and be a note of nutmeg. It smells so good. It smells like the holidays. Anytime you break out the nutmeg, I love it. Okay, such a beautiful smell. I'm gonna mix this together once more. And you can see after we add all of that coconut sugar in, it turns this really rich molasses almost color to it, so it's so beautiful. And you just wanna check here and make sure it's not too hot. If it's still pretty hot like mine is, what you can do is just temper this egg mixture, and that's super easy to do. So all I'm gonna do is take a little bit of my hot sweet potato mixture here, and I'm gonna add it into those eggs and heavy cream, and I'll whisk that together, and that's gonna help warm up those eggs. That way when we put it into the sweet potato mixture, it doesn't scramble and get all gross. So just mix that together. You can actually do a little bit more too, just to make sure that nothing's gonna scramble and ruin your holiday dish here. This has gotta be one of my all-time favorite potluck dishes. It is so easy to make and full of wholesome things, really simple, but boy is it satisfying. Okay, those eggs are nice and tempered. I'm gonna add them straight in here now. Scrape that all out, we want every last bit. And we're almost done, this is so easy. One last mix. Perfectly smooth. That's ready to go. So now we're gonna move this over. I'm gonna grab my greased casserole dish. I just rubbed it down with lots of nice yummy butter, and we'll pour this into that casserole dish. It's nice and smooth and velvety. It's gonna be so yummy. I love the contrast of the really smooth sweet potato mixture along with the crunchy and kind of caramelized topping with the pecans. It's so good. So even if you don't like sweet potatoes, you have to try this because I feel like it doesn't really count. It's something different. Every little bit that you can. Spread this out just a little bit. And I like to make sure I have plenty of room around the edges of my dish. That way it doesn't bubble over with that brown sugar topping and make a mess in the oven. So really get a nice deep dish. Now I'm just gonna sprinkle over that crunchy pecan topping. Oh, we lost one. Lost a couple. All right, over the top. Get every last bit, even if it seems like a little too much, it's gonna bake down, so get every last drop you can. There we go, bake it off. This recipe is a day of recipe, so you can prep a little bit of it ahead of time, but you definitely want to make this fresh and have it be ready just an hour or two before you want to serve it. So it's a Brussels sprout and pear and bacon salad. So I'm starting by taking a few slices of bacon that I just cut with scissors, and I'm getting that in a skillet, and I'm just going to saute that down until it's nice and crispy and all the fat is rendered, because what we're going to do is take a pound or so of Brussels sprouts, and half of those we're going to shred up and leave raw, and the other half we're going to quarter or halve depending on what size they are, and we're going to sear those off in that rendered bacon grease, and it's going to give them the most amazing flavor. It's going to be caramelized, and then we're going to add in that bacon into our salad. So in order to get the best texture on the Brussels sprouts, I like to place them cut side down in the hot skillet. That way I can get a really nice sear on one side. I'll salt and pepper it, let that cook for 3 to 4 minutes until it's nice and brown. And then I'll even throw in a little bit of avocado oil if I need to, because there's not that much bacon grease. We're only using a few slices of bacon, so it's not going to be super heavy. So we're just going to drizzle that with a little extra oil, and then I'll toss those Brussels sprouts and try to get a little bit more browning on the other side. Then we're going to add the Brussels sprouts in with the raw Brussels sprouts and the bacon, season it with salt and pepper, and toss that together. And those cooked Brussels sprouts kind of start to cook the raw Brussels sprouts. So it's a really interesting mixture of textures, and it's really great because not everybody wants to eat just tons of raw Brussels sprouts. It can be a little bit hard to digest. So having the mixture of raw with the cooked, and then I'm adding in some fresh celery, and we're going to dress it, and it'll kind of marinate and get a little bit softer like with kale. So this is a really great thing that you can make just an hour or two ahead of time, and it's going to be delicious. I'm going to make a really easy shallot vinaigrette. You could use a sweet onion too if you don't have shallots, that's no problem. It's still going to taste really good. So you're just going to take a little bit of shallot or sweet onion, and we're going to combine that with some whole grain mustard. If you don't have whole grain, you could also just sub that for honey mustard. And then I'm going to add in some honey. You could use maple syrup too. There's always a swap you can make with these kinds of recipes. And then I'm using a white wine vinegar here, and that's just going to make it a really nice neutral dressing. That way we can taste all the other flavors that are going on in the salad. So add plenty of salt and pepper, and then I add in olive oil or avocado oil, either one works. And then you add in that fresh onion or shallot, stir it up, and you can kind of let that marinate in the fridge. So you can make this dressing ahead of time, and it's going to sit and kind of soften that onion flavor. And then we'll just dress that salad, toss it together, and let it sit in the fridge for a little while to chill, let the Brussels sprouts absorb all of that dressing. And I like to add in a bunch of candied pecans. You can do this right when you're serving, or you can do it a few minutes ahead of time, but I do like to add it right at the end though, because they retain their crunch a lot more. And then to top this off and just really make it special and seasonal, I'm taking a red pear. You can use any pear, but I love the red. It's so beautiful, and the green and the red just look so holiday. So I'm going to take the core out of that pear, and then I'm going to thinly slice it, almost like you would with a mandolin, but I'm just using a knife. And then I actually like to split up my pear, and this is optional, but I like to take some of those slices and I'll actually chop them up and dice them and toss those into the salad. And the other half that I just sliced will end up going as a garnish on top of it. The most enticing way I found to serve salads is to make sure it's full of the toppings, but then also top it with those things so that there's just extra and you can see what's going on in it. So I've got pears on top, extra candied pecans, and then I just shaved fresh Parmesan right over the top before serving. Thanks so much for joining me in the kitchen as we prepare for the holidays together. I hope you have a beautiful holiday season, and I look forward to sharing more of these videos with you soon. If you're looking for any of these recipes, you'll find them at healthyelizabeth.com, and everything will be linked down in the description.